everything you're going through, everything you've been through is preparing you for who you're meant to become and possibly who you're meant to be with.
It's better with us two. We're better together.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Brettertogether. I don't know why I said it with an accent. Better together. We never get these intros. What is that? This is a podcast about bridge building in every area of your life. I am Mina Thomas Brett.
I'm Briden Thomas Brett.
And we are your hosts. We are here with episode 17.
That's wild.
We're guys, here. Thank you for rocking with us. If you're new here, definitely go back. Check out some of our previous episodes, especially the ones about our story. Those are always popular with you people. So maybe, if you like this one, you'll like the other ones. It definitely helps you to get some background on the story and how the Lord brought us together and all the beautiful things that go with that. We want to welcome you to like, comment, subscribe. Follow us on all the platforms. We got the TikTok. We got the Instagram. We got YouTube. Definitely give us a follow. Comment your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions. We always love that. And come check us out on our website at brettertogether.com.
Yep.
We just want to say thank you to everyone who has donated thus far, because it is helping to keep the podcast going, and we're really grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, we are. And if you have any suggestions or for podcast topics, questions, issues, concerns, problems, whatever you have, you can go to brettertogether.com/podcast, and there's a button there for submissions, and we'll add it to our list. And we'd love to consider, just creating content that serves you. That's really what our focus is. And it's this balance, right, of doing things that we're passionate about that really serves our audience and that's going to be popular.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we just focus on what we feel God's called us to do, and what's going to serve you the most. And we trust that the popular will take care of itself if it's meant to be. So We're just trying to reach as many people as possible with the messages the Lord's given us that have been kind of embedded into our story. And speaking of our story, today, we're back to our story. It's been a while since we really talked about our story. I guess last episode we talked about your first experience at church with me, and we talked about my experience at church with you, but really our love story and how we came together. I haven't addressed that for a little bit. We've talked about how we met, we talked about our first date, and now we're going to roll all the way back to before we met.
Yeah. Talking
about who we were before we met each other and how God prepared us for each other. I think this should be a great episode for anybody who, is interested in a relationship or wondering how God's going to bring the pieces together within a relationship they might be in, or just in their life in general. And I think as we look back at our lives, we find that God is always weaving as the author and finisher of our story, this amazing tapestry that we can't always see in the moment. And as we go back and look at all the breadcrumbs, it's like, wow, he really was preparing us for one another. But how we found each other is not the state we're currently in. And I'm excited to hear your perspective on who you were before you met me. And then, how you feel God kind of prepared us for each other. So are you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
All right. Okay. So, when I found you, when the Lord led me to you, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you were in a place where you might, I hesitate to say the word jaded, but maybe your heart was a little bit calloused over. You were definitely, I don't think you were super open, to a relationship. I think you'd had some experiences that had made you not want to be open, that you put a little bit of a moat around your heart, and we always joke about how I was able to get in, to your heart and all this, that, and the other. But just curious, what happened before we got married? before we met in Germany on Christmas Day 2013. Like, what's kind of some of the backstory there as to why you were even prepared to recognize me? Does that make sense?
I don't know. That's a lot.
Yeah, I recognized.
What happened? My whole life.
Your whole
happened
life, yeah.
before
Yeah,
I met you. Relationally, I think the first guy I ever really liked was a white guy. So there's that.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I always knew I was not going to marry a Caucasian woman.
Yeah, that's so weird.
Yeah, it's just this inner knowing. Yet all the girls I dated were pretty much Caucasian.
Right.
So
it's funny because the first guy, I ever really liked, he was white. But then after that, everybody I liked after that was the complete opposite of you, or just different.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really discriminate when it came to like who I would date. It's just like, you was fine. That's my type, fine. So I just I dated, or was interested, not even just like dated a bunch of people, but was interested in a lot of different kinds of people. But yeah, relationally, the first guy I ever liked was white boy. And then from there were like guys that I liked in school, and there was varying degrees of I don't think I really had a real boyfriend until I got to college. And I was dating a guy who was in the military when I was in college. And then after him was a guy that I liked, but turns out he had a girlfriend, and that was weird because he didn't have a problem with talking to me even though he had a girlfriend. And I was just like,
oh, wait, what?
What?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was very odd. And then we're like, oh, well, we'll just be friends. But that just didn't work because we liked each other. So that did not work. And our friendship was weird and had different like levels to it. But he was one of the people who was just like very, very weirded out by the different aspects of me. Like one time we're on the phone and I read a poem that I had written to him, because we were big on sharing like our musical like and artistic endeavors. That was something that we did a lot. And I'd never read a poem to him before, so I read it to him. And I thought he was going to be like, wow, that was great. Or like, oh, I'm not really into poetry, but that was cool, And he was just like, that was scary. And I was like, what?
Whoa.
He's like, you just turned into another person. That was really, really scary. And I was just like, I'm sorry, what? It was definitely not the reaction that I was expecting or a reaction I had ever had before, but it did plant a seed of like, being my full self is not okay. Like there are pieces of me that I need to hold back, And then I dated the guy that I thought that I was going to marry. And that was...
And he was more your type physically, right? Like,
yeah.
Or who you thought you might.
Yeah, he's tall, dark, handsome. That was kind of, I guess, what I expected I'd end up with. Just because that's what my dad looks like,
Right.
So, and I'm a big daddy's girl, so it's just like, oh, well, that idea that women usually end up marrying somebody who's very much like their dad. So I just that was kind of in the back of my mind all the time. I was only ever interested in like two guys that were tall and dark and handsome. But one of them I thought I was going to marry. Actually, no. I don't know. There was another guy that was in the mix, but it just never went anywhere. We were just like super tight, but
Yeah.
it didn't become anything. But yeah, relationally, I think there were enough things that I gleaned from previous relationships that I knew how I wanted to be treated, how I didn't want to be treated. The most recent one being the most impactful, I think, even though there were other guys that I had talked to or kind of entertained after that relationship, it just never became anything because I was just over the red flags and I was not trying to entertain or move forward with any relationship that was gonna blatantly like show me those red flags and me just be like, oh, okay. No, I saw him and I was not going with it. I was like, okay, that's the red flag you want to show me. This is the buck stops here. This is where this is where we're wrapping up. We're not going any further,
Yeah.
And that happened a few times right before I met you.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it just was not something that I was willing to entertain anymore.
Did you really want to get married?
I was back and forth about that.
Yeah.
I think after the last relationship before you, I was kind of like, I think I'm good if I don't, like I don't.
Did you really consider that you might not?
I considered it because it was just like.
Were you okay with that?
Yeah, I was okay with it. I mean, it gets lonely sometimes, but like, I knew that I didn't want to deal with being, unevenly matched. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to just settle if it wasn't like the relationships that I had witnessed in my life that had gone well. Like I didn't want less than that.
Yeah.
And I was okay with not having a relationship at all if it meant that I had to say I was not interested at all in settling. So I was just like, if it comes along, cool, but I'm gonna live my life, up to that point. This is one of the reasons why I went to Germany, because I was like, I'm going to live and I'm not gonna wait for a man to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, callous is an interesting word. I guess maybe
Is that accurate?
There were some calluses. I've never really been open anyway. I've never been like a really super open person. I don't think. Maybe I was more open when I was like in high school and, junior high and stuff like that. But I remember one time I was on the bus and these guys didn't know that I was nearby and they were talking about me. And they were like, well, what about her? Do you think she's pretty? Would you date her? Or do you want to, go out with her? And it was like, I mean, she's pretty, but her nose is too big. I wouldn't. And I was just like, wow. I remember what I was wearing when that happened. I remember my hairstyle. I remember literally like so many things about what was going on. And I remember just being like, wow, that's how people see me. And almost like adopting those thought processes about myself. I never really thought about my nose being too big or whatever the size or shape or anything. I never thought of it until somebody brought it up.
Wow.
And it kind of became part of the way I saw myself for a long time. And I experienced things like that, especially in junior high and high school. There were just like things that people said about me or to me that I had heard, that got back to me, things like that kind of dented my confidence. And so that was something that played into even the kind of guys that I would talk to or entertain or, but I still, even in high school, like I had discernment and there were certain guys that I would just be like, no, absolutely not. They would show interest and I'd be like, no. Like one guy, he was so cool. We were really good friends. We saw each other a lot, He was on the track team and I was in theater. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that seems weird, but we were always in the building, the high school building. We were always together. We were always in the building at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And there was that period where we had to wait for their practice to start and our rehearsal to start. We would just be hanging out in the hallways, like sitting on the floor, or like sometimes there would be bleachers in the hallways for whatever reason because they were moving things around. We'd be like lounging around on the bleachers, hanging out. Like we used to hang pretty tight. And there was this one guy, and he was like a star on the track team. And he would like hint around at me, like, you know, you should go out with me because XYZ. And I would always just laugh at him. And then one day he really was just like serious. And he's like, you don't want to go out with me? I was like, no. And we were good friends. So I felt like I was okay to talk candidly with him. But I was like, no. And he was like, why not? It's like, because you're crazy and I know you are. I can see it in your eyes. I can tell that you're crazy. There's some things in there that they're not wrapped tight. And he just laughed at me, but I was serious. I was like, I'm good off that. Thanks. You know? And I also had rules about who I would date anyway.
Yeah.
Because I was related to pretty much everyone black in my hometown. And I was like, I'm not dating any black boys. I didn't really date any black guys. Until later in life because I was convinced that I was related to everybody that that was in my hometown, unless they were from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew a guy that I really liked and he was from Brooklyn, so I was just like, okay, he's not from here, and he was like completely different, like what's the word, ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just like, okay, fine, I'm pretty sure I'm not related to you, but like I was not about that life when I was in high school. So I think I'm just trying to think about like who I was before we met. I could say I was pretty arrogant.
In what ways?
I've always been intelligent, and one of the things that comes with knowledge, if you're not careful, one of the things that comes with knowing a lot is arrogance. Mm-hmm. Another thing that comes with youth is arrogance. So you could see how I had like, you know, a few different opportunities to be arrogant, and I was. Mm-hmm. And so there was just like certain standards that I had that now they don't, like, you know, having had life experience and things, like they don't hold up, and they're not, you know, they're not right. But yeah, church girl, knew Jesus, so I knew everything. You know, that kind of mindset. Mm-hmm. The more I knew, the more I realized that I didn't know anything.
Right.
You know, but
right.
As a young person, I was kind of a know-it-all, pretty arrogant, pretty strong-willed, bit of a hypocrite.
Hypocrite?
Oh yeah.
What do you mean?
I was a hypocrite because they were like, you know, you know how it is when you could like see certain things that people are doing wrong on the outside, and you don't, like, I didn't really know much about like my inward life at the time. You know what I mean? So it was very much like everything that's on the outside is put together, but like, you know, but there was some dead man's bones on the inside, you know? So like that, you know, just like I had thoughts and ideas and opinions about things, and, you know, could look at someone else's life and say, well, that's not right and that's not right, but not be able to recognize it in myself because my struggles were more inward than they were outward. Okay. So yeah, hypocrite. But I mean, those are the negative things. On the positive side, I was really talented. Yeah. Very passionate about my talent. And I mean, I didn't really know how rare my gift was. People told me that they liked the way I sang and stuff like that, but I didn't really believe that I was all that different.
Yeah.
And that's because I grew up around a lot of talented people. So I
Right.
wasn't like taking into account that the rest of the world isn't like that, you know?
Right.
This is such an interesting conversation because I'm like trying to reflect on who I was, and I just
Yeah.
like I've known you for so long,
Yeah.
for over a decade now,
Right.
you know, and it's like meeting you was like waking up from a dream where all of those things that I was were not who I actually was.
Mm.
And when I met you, I started discovering who I actually am.
Mm.
And it's not like, it wasn't just like you did it, but it was the trajectory that I was on. So it kind of happened alongside our relationship as well as through and in our relationship. So those two things are kind of like, I don't know, overlapping in my brain, and it's kind of hard to separate them and parse out, like, you know, all the things that I was. I probably was more lost then. I definitely was more lost than I am now. I was younger. When I was younger, I didn't know Christ as well as I do now. Not that I know him perfectly or anything, but it was just, yeah, I met you when I was on the trajectory of meeting him for real.
Yeah.
And then meeting myself, and then, so all of it kind of coalesced. Yeah. Well, I hope.
Interesting.
I'd like you to answer your own question.
Yeah, for sure. Well, can you contrast that with who you are now?
Who I am now?
Yeah, like what's like what has changed since the Lord brought me into your life? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Man. I'm definitely more of a scholar because I was becoming that, like that was the trajectory I was on, and you encouraged that. And so it was just like, yeah, I'm more of a scholar than I was. And it's like you prized that, and so it kind of was something that was cultivated in me more than I think it would have been if you didn't like that or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely humbler for sure. I'm a bridge builder, and I think I was always a bridge builder, but I didn't know I was. So I'm more aware. I know myself. I'm more self-aware. I love myself, and I didn't before you did.
Yeah.
I didn't even know I didn't until I was faced with seeing how someone acts when they love me. That's not like a part of my family or something, I've had so many poignant interactions with Jesus since meeting you. Yeah, I'm kinder. I'm more loving. I know what love means in theory, in definition, and in practice. Like there's so many things, I'm more service minded, more service oriented. Like I want to serve people, which I didn't want to before, but it was because I was afraid of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see things more in the realm of like miracles and things like that than I ever did. So
That's great. So looking back, as you compare those two things, like where do you see the hand of God in preparing you for me and for the life that we would have together?
I think the Lord allowed me to come in contact with a lot of decoys so that I'd be able to recognize like true and real love. So one thing I can say I see his hand in is the way that he works all things together for our good.
Yeah.
He did a lot of work just to get me to the baseline of good.
Yeah.
So that I could move forward from good and get to acceptable and get to his perfect will for me, because there was just a lot of things people have been saying. Some of the people in our comments have said like, well, some of these things that happen, some of the drama that happens in life has happened because, the Lord is getting you ready for, the right thing and for the real thing. And to a degree, I agree, because the Lord is able to work all things together for our good, though, sometimes we get to good and we forget the stuff that we did that was our fault.
Right.
We're like, oh, well, the Lord is able to work it out, but that doesn't mean that he ordained for you to do that or to go through that or to experience that. You were hard-headed enough to go through it, and he was God and sovereign and divine enough to take it and turn it into something that could be used as fertilizer for your flourishing. But that does not mean that he's the one who sent you headlong into that situation.
Yeah.
And so my past and my life leading up to you is a wonderful wonderful amalgamation of the good that he brought about and the things that he actually did ordain, because they're not the same.
Yeah.
And I just the Lord, there are trials and tests, and then there's the things that you did because you was hard-headed, that was not what he told you, and it wasn't a trial, and
right,
and if it was a test, you failed. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. right.
It's important to differentiate between the things that the Lord uses to make and to mold us, and the things that we do on our own because we cannot see that he is capable of orchestrating our lives himself. Like, we be trying to, he's the author and finisher, and we be editing.
Right.
And and we don't need to, because if he's the finisher, that means he's the editor too.
Yep.
He's the one who puts the book of your life, the story of your life, into production so that it can be, mass produced so that other people can experience his goodness in your story, that kind of thing. Like, he's the one in charge of all of it. But we be like, inserting, well, let me do the introduction. Let me do the foreword, and it's like, you are already the main character. Okay. You don't got to do all that. All you got to do is live and let him orchestrate. But there are those times when we are the ones who are like, well, I brought this character in. What do you think? And the Lord is like, I didn't write them into the story, but we can give them a few lines,
Right.
And so I think it's important to just differentiate. Like, there were things that I did that I didn't have to go through. Some of the things that I did, I didn't have to go through those things. I saw the writing on the wall. I saw the red flags. Maybe it was ordained for me to meet that person. Maybe it was ordained for that person to help the Lord mold my perspective and mold my, my heart so that I would be ready for the perfect. But I did not have to go to the degree that I went in giving them as much of myself as I did. I did not have to engage. I didn't have to do any of the things that I did. I could have met the person, saw the red flag, and moved on, but I didn't. I engaged. And so that completely changes the trajectory of the story. Does that mean that God can't work it out for good? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that maybe he has to do a little bit more work to get to the good.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's great.
I just, I wanted to emphasize that because sometimes we chalk up our bad decisions to, oh, well, the Lord, brought this about so that I could learn X, Y, Z. And it's like, how much of that was him and how much of that was me?
Right. Yeah. I heard Jackie Hill Perry the other day. She's talked about this vision she had. And she said, I say vision very cautiously because some of y'all out there just like to think, just have an over sanctified imagination.
Oof.
You know what I mean?
Or
And so,
under sanctified.
yeah. Or no, but you think anything that comes to your imagination is a vision from God. Is her point, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the same idea here. Is like sometimes
Mm-hmm.
the difference between what is ordained of God and what was a mistake on your part that he turned to your good, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and there is a difference.
Yeah.
There is a difference because there's, you know, one of the really great examples of that is Jesus, right? With Judas.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, who knows how he could have messed that up if he would have interfered or done anything that was not in the will of the Father for him.
Mm-hmm.
He handled everything the way he was supposed to.
Yeah.
Including and especially Judas.
Mm-hmm.
Because I say this all the time, like, who had better discernment than Jesus? Nobody. He saw Judas. He knew who he was, and he knew what he was there for. But he still loved him. He still called him to follow him. He drew him closer, even though he was the reason why he went to the cross.
Right.
You know, he was the catalyst that sent him to the cross.
Mm-hmm.
We're the reason he went to the cross, but he was the catalyst, you know. And he saw that, but that didn't make him treat him any differently.
Yeah.
He still said, hey, friend, you know, come closer. Sit next to me. Dip in the dipping bowl with our hands next to each other. Like, that's a lot.
Right.
That's a lot for him to see that, to have the full discernment of knowing what it was that Judas was there for, and to still proceed according to the plan.
Right.
And not like try to change it or mess it up.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we don't even discern why a person is coming into our circle, why a person has come into our life. And we might see it and be like, oh, well, it must be because of this. And we just take for granted what we think the interpretation is, instead of seeing it, peeping it like, okay, I see it, but what does it mean? Taking it to the Lord and allowing the Lord to let you in on this part of the story and be like, okay, well, this is why they're here, you know?
Yeah.
The Lord told me when I was younger, he's like, you have a pretty face for a reason. Everybody that's attracted to your face is not for you. Just because you're pretty, and they came because you're pretty. I gave you that face because it draws people. It makes people trust you so that they'll trust me. But that doesn't mean that just because they were attracted to you that, okay, this is your husband or this is the person that you're supposed to be in relationship with, just because they were attracted to your face. No.
Right.
They're attracted to your face so that you can draw them.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. You draw them. I'll do the rest. And sometimes we get a little mixed up with that, especially as women. You know, oh, well, he's attracted to me. He sees me. He thinks I'm pretty. So that must mean that the Lord sent him. If he did send him, maybe he didn't send him for the purpose that you think. And you need to seek the Lord about that. So, yeah, I feel like that has been my mistake a few times. It's just been like, you know, somebody being drawn to the Holy Ghost in me, to the God in me, seeing that there's something different about me and saying that, like, there's just something about you, but not knowing that the thing that they were really seeing was the Holy Spirit, was Jesus, you know, drawing them to him through me.
Yeah.
And me being like, oh, well, yeah, maybe you're right, trusting their assessment instead of bringing it to the Lord. You know what I mean? So that's why I say, like, you know, you can absolutely mess up, you know, whatever it is that the Lord was trying to do. You can get in the middle of that and get in the way by, you know, trusting your discernment, which is a gift from the Lord, but maybe trusting your assessment of what you see instead of taking that to the Lord.
Right.
I've done that a couple of times where it was just like I could have avoided heartache. I could have avoided certain things. Maybe not all the things, but I could have avoided some of the things I put myself through
Right.
because I was not obedient.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, yeah, I know that if I had not gone through the relationships I'd gone through, then I don't know that I would have recognized you for who you were.
Mm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
you're just a great combination of all the things that I liked about the relationships that I was in, all the men that I love that have made an impact on my life,
Mm-hmm.
and more importantly, God's love for me. You're just like all these things and people in one person. But I think the main thing that's different about you is your packaging.
Right.
Yeah, it's just
Not
like
tall, not dark, but handsome.
not tall enough.
Tall enough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely handsome. Super light skinned. But handsome. And, so.
Well, I think that's the lesson, really. It's 'cause we always say this, like, if it hadn't been Christmas Day 2013, that exact time, that exact day, that exact location, I don't think I would have been ready for you or recognized you. I don't think you'd have been. It's just like miraculous, when you think about how love can actually happen, like,
Yeah, love in
because
itself
one
is a
person can be ready
miracle.
and the other person's not, and vice versa. And it takes two people who are ready to make a commitment to walk life out together, and love is just risky. It's like it's so one person does open their heart, but the other person's not ready. So then they close it, and then that person gets ready, and they're not ready now. It's like back and forth, and that can happen. And then and it's like, okay, that train has left the station, and is that train ever coming back? And so there's again like some scarcity sometimes around relationships. So I, at least in your mind, right? And I'd love to change that for people because I don't think it's necessarily that way. But I think I just have to look at it. I don't know that I would have any other circumstance. Like, I think the Lord knew for us that's how it had to happen.
Yeah.
For us and the unique blueprint and mission that we have as a couple. So I think there's some generalizations that people can draw from, though, that everything you're going through, everything you've been through is preparing you for who you're meant to become and possibly who you're meant to be with. You have a unique gift cluster and life stack. You were born in a certain location, to a certain family, certain socioeconomic, cultural, ethnic, geographic location. All those things already make you unique. Even if somebody was born next door to you on the same day, there's variances in timing and again in the family you're born into. So already you're unique. And then you start going through life and you start having different experiences, and then you have different interests. And so excuse me, all these things combine throughout your life to make you completely unique. And it's this amazing story. And so when the Lord brings, knowing your story and somebody else's story, when he brings you together, he's doing it for a reason. And he wants to be able to tell an even greater story through you. You know what I mean? And so I think that's part of it. Like, even if you have made mistakes, God can turn those to your good.
Absolutely.
But then all the things that he has ordained for you, if you keep on walking in those things and trusting him, you can trust that he's leading you to a unique path, and that your path is going to be different than everybody else's, because you are different than everybody else.
Amen.
Right? So,
yeah.
so,
I mean, what do you have next?
well, I know I can go into kind of my version of everything you just said.
Yeah, I want to hear.
Yeah, I'll be brief, but I think I think who I was before I met you was I was at least I was also arrogant in a way, And in my religious tradition, there's, and I think in yours and a lot of them, there's this feeling of exclusion and elitism, that we're right, other people are wrong. And you might have some truth, but we have all of it, and I think I was in that box a little bit. And so, but again, the Lord started preparing me for you to be able to see you. And I look back at my life, I'm like, okay, grew up in Dallas, Texas. Even though I'm Latter-day Saint, I grew up, so didn't grow up in Utah, so I'm not in that kind of culture where it's like just all around me. I grew up in Dallas, so I'm in the Bible Belt. And then I moved to Branson, Missouri, the buckle of the Bible Belt. And I grew up singing on stage, meeting people of all backgrounds, and going to a Christian school where I got to do chapel days, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and be exposed to contemporary worship. I knew the Bible really well, just even those things kind of stacking up to prepare me to meet you and love you and appreciate you, and appreciate the differences. I think
always knowing that you weren't going to marry a white person.
Oh yeah. No, I have 15 pages of divine evidences, that I put together. I documented, a lot of those things just because I needed to look at the evidence, but there are certain revelations that came, certain revelations that only you will line up to, that happened years before I met you. And nobody else lined up to them. So as I was coming up on meeting you, I really do think I was prepared finally. I'd been through multiple relationships where I had been the one who had broken things off, but I always knew I had to be broken too. And so really kind of the relationship prior to you, the person broke it off with me. And so that was the first time I'd experienced heartbreak in that way. You know what I mean? And so I'd kind of gone through the full gamut of breaking it off and being broken. And I think through all the relationships I'd learned a piece of what I wanted from each of them. A lot of things, ultimately there were enough things that I didn't feel compatible with, that didn't feel aligned with me, that I couldn't commit to those relationships, even as amazing as they were. It just wasn't aligned. There wasn't alignment. But there's something from this relationship. I liked the chemistry of this one. I liked the music part of this one. I liked the sense of humor of this one. I liked the scholarly, nature of this, and the kind of how it could be a friend of their mind. I liked how this person was goal oriented, and this kind of thing. And put all this stuff together, and then one particular that's like more of a spiritual giant. I knew that was a really important thing. So I got to the beginning of 2013. At the end of 2012, 2012 was a funny year because I was doing shows with my family on the stages of Branson. And 2011 and 2012, I was voted Branson's Bachelor of the Year. and I was getting so much, flack or whatever from people coming to the show every day saying, "Oh, why aren't you married?" Blah, blah, blah. And so we decided to make a joke out of it. And in 2012, created this song called "Just for the Rice." Is it
still on YouTube?
No, we took it down. The premise was I got married just for the rice. And and I actually did this. This is crazy that we did this. Did this contest. And I put it out there because I would say this joke in the show to the audience, say, "Guys, I'm so excited to announce I'm getting married on December 31st, 2011. And everybody would go crazy, like, "Yes," he says. And I said, "I'm not sure I'm getting married to, who I'm getting married to, but I'm getting married December 31st, 2011. And everybody would laugh, But so we took that joke and actually turned it into a thing. And so we put a deadline on it, like December 31st, 2012. Did the Just for the Rice campaign. And said, "Ladies, if you're eligible, here's a submission form, submit." To get married to Briden on December 31st. And it was a joke. The whole thing was a joke. And most people knew it was a joke, but then some people did not. They took it super seriously. And I got gifts. And I got some bags of rice.
Somebody gave us a huge, it was one of your cousins, gave us a huge bag of rice for our wedding party.
Yeah.
When we had our wedding party in Branson.
Yeah.
And I did not understand because you never told me the story about the just for the
yeah.
rice. You had to explain it to me because somebody gave us rice.
Yeah. So anyway,
I think mom and dad might still have it. They might have gotten rid of it by now, but it was in the garage for a long time.
So funny. But anyway, so Branson's Bachelor of the Year, do this campaign, trying to make light of it, but in the background, I'm actually like hurting, because I'm like, I'm done with this, and so that started at the end of 2012. I'm done joking about it. In 2013, I got really serious about dating, and at the end of 2012, I did my annual dream time, and I created my vision board for the year. And part of the vision board was I really got this clarity. It was this interesting clarity where everything kind of coalesced, and I just had a feeling like I think I'm ready to actually commit to a woman. I think I'm ready to do this. I think my heart is ready to finally say yes all the way and commit to somebody. Mm-hmm. And the final piece was I knew that part of the chemistry I actually drew from one of my bro relationships. I have 3 bros that, like we just get together. It's like riding a bike, mm-hmm. and we can joke together. And I noticed again the trend that I was continually attracted to people of color in my life, and my best bros were people of color. And I was like, okay, so that I feel like there's something here. Like there's a chemistry here. There's a natural, gravitational pull to these guys and to women of color as well. And so anyway, so that was the final piece that I put into my vision board. So on my vision board, I had the body of an LDS sister missionary with the top of Alicia Keys.
You always say top. Just the top, the head.
The
just
head. No, it's like I think was it just the head? I think it was at least shoulders up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Anyway, I can't remember.
I think you showed it to me, but
yeah.
I think you got rid of it.
Crazy, right? So, but we talk about like knowing what you want, mm-hmm. And I think I came to that point where I was like, okay, I'm looking for these things, but I also knew I'm not going to, like hold to this so rigidly. I'm going to be flexible, and I'm not going to expect perfection in somebody else, Mm-hmm. So I think I just kind of came to this point where I had the balance of understanding that I'm not going to find Hollywood, I'm not going to find perfection. And we're going to have to grow together. But there has to be a certain level of chemistry, a certain level of spark, that has a certain level of this, and this for me to know that, hey, there's enough here for me to build on and I can commit to this relationship. So I started dating really heavily. And then, episode 1, we tell the story of, how I got to the end of episode 2013. And I'm like, God, I'm tired of just being mediocre. Mm-hmm. And tired of chasing after marriage. I'm going to chase after you. And then I, stopped chasing after marriage, stopped chasing after any women and any relationships, and ended all that. And then 7 days later, he leads me to you. And so I just think every relationship that I had and every experience I had was preparation for meeting you and mm-hmm. and then just in general, my entire life, like I just think there's value in every experience. There's value. There's a lesson in everything. You can either choose to view things that happen to you that are potentially negative as losses or lessons. And I have no regrets. And I'm just grateful for how the Lord kind of brought all the pieces together in my life so that when he led me to you, I was prepared to see you and to move forward. Not by any means. I mean, even though I said, yeah, I'm going to marry that girl, I knew in the back of my mind, like, we're going to have a journey here. Like, even though I said it, I was like, what am I saying? Number one. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, if that's really going to happen, there are going to be a lot of miracles. Mm-hmm. And so then we went into 5 years of miracles. Miracle territory. So, right. So who I was before, I'd say, was a little more arrogant, elitist, exclusionary, in the box. Definitely looking for only one thing, especially religiously. And because I never saw myself marrying outside of the LDS tradition. But because the Lord brought me to a place of brokenness and hunger for him, I was willing to accept however he wanted to package his answer.
That's good.
And I'm really grateful for that.
I would say it's the same.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah. So so I think, and so then after, obviously, like, it's the opposite of all those things. Everything that was negative, I have kind of flipped in a way, to a degree, and I'm still improving. And everything that was positive has been amplified because of our relationship. And you've said it in previous episodes. I think that's what the right love will do, is cause you to flourish, cause you to bloom. And I've bloomed under your hand just as much as you've bloomed under mine, you know? So anyway.
You're so sweet.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. We kind of felt led to talk about this. This is actually something we've never talked about really before.
I mean, I don't want to discount like the positive things that were there. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think when I thought of who I was before you, I was all just thinking about all the negative stuff that, you know, you came and were improved because you were there. But there was enough positivity that, you know, that obviously I was something that you were interested in, you know?
Oh, same. Yeah. I was enough. There's enough swag, but I would say the black wife effect is for real. I mean, I was a little swaggy, you know, but yeah, it's different. It's different now. And, you know, it'll be even more different when you get the munties right.
The munchies.
The munties.
Yeah, that's funny. People have asked us to do the black wife effect thing, and it's just like,
right.
Really? I mean, we could. I guess we could. We'll probably do it eventually. We'll be like, you know, the latecomers to the conversation, but I'm sure we'll do it at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was enough. You know, I was musically inclined, which probably I would say definitely needed to be a thing to you know, in order for our families, for us to fit into each other's families. You know, our families are very similar when it comes to musical talent and musical inclination and just the artistic and the creativity sides of things. Like everything that fits together pretty well.
I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah.
For not only for our families, but for us. I knew I needed an artist, or at least someone who understood an artist lifestyle.
Yeah.
And you do. Like, you grew up in the studio with your dad.
Yeah.
And so you get it when I have to have a long day, you know, which is like every day.
Which is every day. But like, yeah, there's times when you're like, oh, babe, you know, you put together this like PowerPoint presentation about why you need to buy said gadget for the studio or something. And I'm just like, okay. I'm never like, well, how much is this going to cost and how long are we going to be paying it off or anything like that. I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. Because that's what I grew up around. My dad had a studio in our house and it was always like this gadget or that gadget. And my mom was never like, don't buy that thing, or you know what I mean? Like, so in a lot of ways, I was groomed, you know, I was raised to be your wife.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
Oh yeah, I even look at it from your flexibility, you know, like that's another way I think you were prepared for me. And also that you didn't have any preconceived notions about Latter-day Saints or Mormons. You know, I think that's another way you were prepared for me. You had a lot of spiritual stamina, so you could do long days of church. You know, you know, there are a lot of similarities when you start breaking it down. You know,
and for you, like just your command of music and understanding of pop culture, and I always knew that I was going to marry a baller. I didn't know how that was going to work.
Baller.
I always knew I was going to marry somebody who was a basketball player.
Yeah,
I always knew that.
Yeah.
It was just something that I always had in the back of my mind. And I didn't know how that was going to factor into everything else. You know, I had no way of knowing that it was like, oh, you're going to play college ball and, you know, be very much immersed in basketball culture, which is so adjacent to hip hop culture, which is so adjacent to Black culture, that you would feel comfortable being around my family. And, you know, you can talk the music talk and talk the basketball talk, and you know what I mean, like,
and walk the basketball walk.
You have the swag, you know, that was necessary for you to fit into my family and into my world.
Yeah.
And that, yeah, you're just a lot of all the positives and wonderful things.
Yeah.
And then that made it possible for us to grow into the match that the Lord
Wow.
had for each of us.
Growing into the match.
We grew into it, because I don't think we were exactly right when we first met.
No.
You know?
No,
we were
not.
We were similar enough that it was that attraction, and that, like, oh, this could work. But we were different enough that it was like, is this going to work? And that's why it took the 5 years it took for us to actually come together, because in a lot of ways we grew into the person that the Lord had for us.
That's good.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah. I agree with that. I totally agree with that. That's really good. So, yeah. So in some ways, maybe this is sounded self-indulgent, to talk about these things, but because we really do want to serve our audience. So I'm just wondering, like, okay, all this is nice for the perfect couple, again, who had this magical meeting at a winter festival in Germany and on Christmas Day, all this stuff, right? But how do we take what we've talked about today? What are the lessons that apply to anybody in their life, specifically in relationships?
Yeah, I would say who you've been in the past, who you've been up to this point, everything you've experienced, all of these things work together to make you the person you are now. None of it is to be discarded, and none of it is to be ashamed of. The Lord is making you into the right person for your right person. And that, I think sometimes we think that our past can disqualify us, or that it dictates so much of the story that we can allow it to keep us from even taking the risk of loving.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you can have gone through so much personal drama that it's like, yeah, I don't even qualify for the type of spouse that I want, or the type of partner that I want. I can't even see how that's possible. And I just want to emphasize that, like, even when you meet the person for you, you're still going to have to do some growing.
Yes.
Until you grow together and fit together,
Wow.
And that's okay. A lot of times, one of the reasons why we can discount or disqualify someone that we come in contact with who might be good for us is like, well, they don't have every single duck in the row that I want, or I don't have every single thing that I need to have in order to be, qualified to be with them. And that kind of can keep us from entering relationships or entertaining relationships, because we're like, well, I'm not ready, and or you're not ready, and that's it. And I think that it's absolutely possible for you to enter into a relationship or a commitment with someone and grow together into what the Lord ordained for you to be. That's usually what happens in relationships anyway. It's like you come together and then you grow together, because you're not everything that person needs, or they're not everything you need. And the way that you grow together is by putting Christ in the center of that and allowing him to actually, like, knit you together into something that will actually show forth his glory in the earth. And that's why I don't know how people who don't have Jesus do this, because it's like, and I've seen it done.
Yeah.
And usually when they do, they're using Christ-like principles.
Right.
You know what I mean? Even if they're not calling it Jesus, they're using the stuff that works.
Yeah.
So I think it's valuable to know that who you've been, who you've become, and who you are really all in the Lord's territory to work out and to transform into something that is so beautiful, and that is so worthy, and that is so capable of reflecting his glory in the earth. And when you come together with the person that he wants you to be with, that's only going to amplify more of who you're supposed to be and help you grow into that.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a lot of pressure on, like, you got to be that thing now, when becoming that thing is really what we're after. It's like being on the road and on the journey to becoming a husband, becoming a wife, becoming a partner. Like, be on the road to becoming that, because once you meet the person that you're supposed to be with, the growth will just continue.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. That's good. That's really good. So for me, a few things I think that are good takeaways is that if you can view every relationship as a lesson, even if there were mistakes made, find the lessons in there and find what you do like and what you don't like. And it's okay to write down and to ponder over and to pray about what you want and to get clarity on that. Obviously, balance that with who you need to become. As you mentioned in a previous episode, does your vibe attract your tribe? Like, you need to be on that path. But I think the most valuable thing that I've learned today is that God can prepare you for one another, but that does not mean that you've both arrived at the destination. You've arrived at the meeting point, and now you need to go on the journey together.
That's so good.
So don't expect perfection, and that you are or have become everything that you feel like you're supposed to become when you start that relationship, because that is what you're supposed to bring to the table. And your partner brings that to the table, and then you grow together. And I think you should pay attention more to trajectory than destination in your potential partner. Are they on the same path as you? Do they have the same desires? Are you guys going toward the same destination? And then start walking that together. Don't feel like you have to have it worked out when you start.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Definitely give yourself grace for growth.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of us, I know a lot of women are expecting men to be a certain kind of person and up to a certain caliber, when they meet them. And if they're not, sometimes that can cause you to just be like, well, no, you're not what I asked the Lord for, so that's it. You know what I mean? Like, you have to also be able to see the potential for growth. That's one thing, is like, you don't want to fall in love with potential, right? But at the same time, you kind of do, because that's literally all we are until we meet the person we're supposed to be with. And even then, we're just like, we're always potential that's either being realized or being, I don't know, ignored or suppressed or, neglected.
Yeah.
That's literally all we are. All we are is potential that's either being realized or neglected.
Yeah.
That's it. And so if you see someone with potential, don't stop there. If they have potential, what are they doing with it? Do they know they have potential? Can they see it in themselves? Are they working towards realizing that potential? Because then you can trust, okay, if you're working on it now, you'll continue working on it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't just discard a person because, oh, well, they have the potential, but that, that doesn't mean anything. Because sometimes, a lot of these men who, got it out the mud, who, came from nothing and became all these wonderful things. A lot of times you look to their side and there's a woman who's been there the whole time, who's been the writer, who saw who they were before they realized who they were, and were with them, helping them build that thing or build that, dream or build that big company or whatever it was that catapulted them to success. The woman who's with them saw that potential usually before they became that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they helped them work on it. And so, see the potential, but also see whether or not the person is working on the dream they have, on the potential that they have. Are they aware of their potential and are they working on it? Because those are some really good indications that you'll be able to put your belief and your trust and your backing behind that person and help them. And also that they will help you do the same.
Yeah, I agree. This is an interesting, I knew that this would be good to talk about. I'm just grateful that we're landing on something that I think is really applicable, really powerful. This idea that, because I see a lot of people who are getting into relationships, single, struggle to get into a relationship because they don't feel like they're worthy enough or they're good enough. Mm-hmm. And then once they have the opportunity, they both look at each other and they're like, well, I'm not worthy. I'm not ready for you. And the other one says, I'm not ready for you. Well, what is ready, And let's replace ready with prepared.
Yes.
Have you been prepared for this moment to come together and now start embarking on a journey together and see where it goes? It's going to be a risk. And that's what we did. We were prepared enough. We were not ready to get married when we met each other. No way. But we were prepared enough. And that allowed us to start the journey together. And then through that is where we learned about trajectory. We still weren't ready for marriage. Like, we were waiting for that to happen, but we were finally prepared enough for marriage so that we could begin that part of our journey together and go into that phase. We had to have enough certainty at each of those points that we were on the right trajectory for us to move forward, and that was the process of learning. And I think this goes back to what is the idea of marriage. And this is fun. Our friend Taylor sent this to us. He said, I think you guys might be able to use this. And I thought, this would be good to use right now. So he was reading this book by Jordan Peterson, and this is just gold, talking about the role of helpmate and the Hebrew translation of that. The term, is it Yezer? Ezer appears throughout the biblical texts. Applied to God, it denotes his provision of potent assistance, and not in a subordinate capacity. Our soul waiteth for the Lord. He is our help, Ezer, and our shield. Psalms 33:20. Add to this portrayal, and all these other psalms, add to this portrayal, depicting God in this Ezer role, a source of strength and aid. The word Ezer is also used to characterize a military ally. It suggests rescue, strength, and strategic advantage. The word kenegdo, in conjunction with Ezer, helps to flesh out this characterization. It appears only as a descriptor of Eve and connotes something like striving with or aiding against. It might be most useful to consider Eve something approximating a beneficial adversary, a partner in play. Optimal development in a relationship, psychologically speaking, depends neither on stasis nor victory, but on challenge. The union of opposites that characterizes the dynamic between male and female is one of mutual trial and testing, the contest of dance or play. The optimal play partner is one whose skills on the playing field equal or perhaps even slightly exceed the skill of the would-be player. That is where the true adventure is to be found, playing in the zone of proximal development, on the edge, on the border between chaos and order, brings the exhilaration that is a marker of continual upward development. It is to bring about this mutual improvement that Eve is created, in a state of fundamental equality and partnership, and in particular, created from Adam's rib, from his side, not from his head, as Athena sprang from Zeus, which would imply a potential superiority, and not from his leg, foot, or other lower bodily part, which would imply subordination or inferiority. Eve corresponds to Adam's precisely as the yin, like the yin and the yang. It is her job to bring to her partner's attention all the concerns that Adam may have overlooked, involved as he is in his enterprise of responsible stewardship. Anyway, that whole thing was just, the idea is like, okay, we've been prepared to come together, and now let's go on the journey together. And the journey is one of mutual improvement and optimal development. The right balance of compensating competencies, where you balance me, I balance you, you challenge me, I challenge you, you stretch me, iron sharpens iron. That's the whole reason for marriage, is that you will grow in ways that you might not be able to grow otherwise toward God and toward becoming the best version of yourself possible, and in oneness with each other and with God. So I don't know, I feel like that's really helpful for anybody who's expecting perfection right away. Don't expect perfection, expect preparation. And then when it comes to making the decision to get married, also don't expect perfection, expect preparation. I think in every state of life,
Right.
every big milestone that you think you need to be prepared for, or need to be ready for and be worthy for, just pay attention. Am I prepared enough for this? Has God prepared me enough for this? Look at my history, look at the breadcrumbs, look at the trajectory I'm on. Yes, I think so. And I think she is, or he is, and let's go.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is, the Lord never calls us to something that he didn't already prepare us for. He doesn't call us to anything that he didn't already put in us. And usually the process of realizing that will call out of us the thing that he planted in there.
Wow.
He doesn't call us to anything that he didn't already prepare for. Like, we're ready, not ready. We're prepared. He puts the preparation in us. He folds what we need to what's the word I want to use? To accomplish the reason that he put us on this earth. He folds that into our very being. It's in our programming. It's in our DNA. Yeah. So if he called you to it, then you're either already prepared, or he will prepare you in the process of you accomplishing what he put you here to do.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Mm.
All right.
Well, this is an interesting way to have this discussion. I wasn't sure what it was going to be.
I didn't either. Yeah.
But it's been good. It's been good to think about some of these things. Just thinking about how we were prepared for each other, and just think about preparation in this light. It's a little bit different than maybe I've ever had a discussion about preparation before. So thank you.
Yes. Keywords: preparation, potential, perfection, trajectory. Those are really key words.
All those P's and a T.
Yes. And just trusting that God is preparing you, that everything you're going through right now has a purpose. And it's part of your unique life stack. It's part of your unique story that's going to prepare you for whatever he has next. And I just continue to hold with, if you continue to not self-sabotage and follow his direction bit by bit, line upon line, precept upon precept, every bit of preparation will get you ready for the next thing he has for you. And if that includes marriage to a perfect partner that, is going to walk by your side, then that's part of the story as well. And he's doing that for you. So if you're in that waiting season, man, just keep on following the light and trusting that everything you're going through is preparing you for what he has in store for you. So,
yeah. I know people will ask the question of, like, how long is too long to be waiting, and how prepared do I need to be, and, things like that. And there are some real life situations that we've, come across in our comments, and people, relating their stories to us that, are different than maybe even what we're saying to you. And there's room for that.
yeah.
It's okay that it's different. And, maybe there's some things that haven't happened yet and you don't think they will, and you're okay with that, and that's okay too. We're just here to encourage you. We're not here to, give you any magical, incantations or potions or anything that's going to change, the way things are, and change your own unique life experiences and things like that. We're here to encourage you and join you in prayer for whatever it is that you're believing the Lord for, and hopefully give you some tools along the way to help you in the wait.
Yeah. Amen.
Amen.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for listening, for watching. As
Yes.
always, like, comment, subscribe, follow, do all the things, turn on the notifications, check out our website. Consider donating if you feel so inclined, and give us some suggestions at the podcast page, brettertogether.com/podcast.
We definitely want those suggestions. We have actually made a few episodes based off of you guys' suggestions. So please, please, please definitely give us those suggestions.
100%. Okay.
All right. So if you've been watching this whole thing, some of you guys watch just to get to this part of the podcast. If that is you, here we go. Let's leave them with a smile on their face, honey.
Okay. I sincerely hope my mom's not listening to this, because she's not going to like this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mom, if you're watching,
I'm sorry, but
stop it now.
I just had to do it though. Why do ducks have feathers on their tails? To hide their butt quacks. My mom hates the B-U-T-T word. All right, we love y'all.
I love you guys.
See you next episode.
Go build a bridge. Bye.